Welcome to today's webinar focusing on infrastructure, hosted by the Department of Trade with support from the UK-Ghana Chamber of Commerce. Infrastructure is a top priority for the Government of Ghana and integral to further development in the country. This webinar will look at the priorities for the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and we're very pleased to have the CEO, Solomon Asamoah, with us to share his knowledge. Solomon is an investment professional with over 25 years of experience, originating and executing transactions in both developed and developing markets. He has personally led over $4 billion in transactions across the African nation. We also have Kofi Andah, Country Director for Crown Agents Ghana, and Phil Atkinson, Managing Director, BHM Construction. Kofi has over 20 years experience in business development, program management, and negotiating multi-million-dollar projects across Africa. Crown Agents have a wealth of knowledge about the procurement process in Ghana. Phil has an international engineering background with 30 years of experience in leading business through growth and change. BHM have been contracted to build a major highway between Tema, just east of Accra, to Afla on the border with Togo. This much needed upgrade will ultimately form part of the Akawas Superhighway, linking Côte d'Ivoire with Nigeria. Before we hear from our guest speakers and go into the Q&A session afterwards, let me introduce Lindsay Gilbert-Crouch, the DIT Country Director for Ghana, who is host for today's webinar. Over to you, Lindsay.
Hi everyone, good morning, and thank you for being patient with us while we sort out our technical glitches, and thanks for that introduction, Peter. I'd like to thank the UK-Ghana Chamber of Commerce for the production of this webinar today, and welcome to today's webinar on infrastructure. As you heard from Peter, our series of webinars are aimed at businesses with an interest in UK-Ghana trade and investment, and I hope you'll find this webinar both interesting and informative, and I hope it encourages you to look at doing business in or with Ghana if you're not already doing so. The DIT team in Ghana is focused on priority sectors for Ghana that the UK has world-class capability in. And aside from infrastructure, those sectors are financial and professional services, green economy, education, digital, defence and security, agri-tech and energy. We also support inward investments, and we are actively looking at how we can support Ghana's aims to improve the business environment by addressing market access barriers. As DIT, our services cover a whole range of things to help you to do business in Ghana. This includes market intelligence and introductions to opportunities, access and introductions to key decision makers among buyers and enablers in Ghana, promotion of UK company products and services, advice on navigating policy and regulations in Ghana, and lobbying and problem solving on behalf of UK companies. We are also able to offer advice on navigating UK-Ghana trade policy and help to address challenges through the BHC platform and the UK-Ghana trade agreement. And we also help to access finance solutions, so that's both for UK export finance and by providing advice on the broader financing environment. You might have read that we have a new bilateral trade agreement in place between the UK and Ghana, so now is really the best time to be considering doing business in Ghana. And I'd now like to just hand back to you, Peter, to carry on with our webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. I fully agree with what you're saying there. The DIT team stands ready. Our first guest speaker is Solomon Asamoah, CEO of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. He joined us last year on our first webinar in this series, and it's great to have him back again today. Solomon, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the warm welcome. I'm very happy to be here, and as mentioned, my name is Solomon Asamoah. I'm the CEO of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. I have a short presentation. Short presentation, it won't last more than about 10 minutes. If I can have the next slide, please. I'll discuss who we are, what we have done, and where Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund stands in the infrastructure framework in Ghana, and how we can work with future people who are looking at investments in Ghana. So just to go back one step, what is the problem that all African governments are trying to solve? They're trying to solve the situation, next slide, where how can they unlock private sector financing to bring in to invest and address the many infrastructure deficits that exist in just about every country in Africa. Next slide, please. All African governments more or less have now put in place reforms to try and attract private sector financing to help invest in our infrastructure. A number of reforms. We now have commercial tariffs, for example. We now usually have free exchange of investments outside of the country or returns outside of the countries. Various things have been put in place over the last decade or so to attract private sector financing. However, still not enough is being attracted into the continent. I think the African Development Bank estimates that some $100 billion per annum for the next 10 years of investment is required in Africa to address the infrastructure deficits. So what can African governments do? Well, the Ghanaian government has tried a bold new initiative where they have actually created a new investment vehicle, capitalized it, and used that as a vehicle to both invest and attract co-investments in the infrastructure sectors in Ghana. And that vehicle is called the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. Next slide, please. So it is a permanent investment vehicle established by the government of Ghana. They put $325 million paid in, not a commitment, but actually cash paid in to the institution to do these investments in infrastructure projects in Ghana. Next slide, please. And what is particularly unique about this is the governance structure of the institution. The government, even though it's all their funds, they've allowed a degree of independence on day-to-day investment decisions by this vehicle. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And how the institution does its investments is by providing equity, debt, or anything in between in investments in infrastructure in Ghana. And the unique corporate governance vehicle for this institution is that the board of directors are made up essentially of private sector individuals, not any current ministers or serving or ministry officials on the board of GIIF, which means that we can look at transactions on a sustainable basis, both financially, make sure that we price for risk, and make sure we adhere to international standards that private sector investors would be comfortable with. Of course, there needs to be oversight because it is a government public vehicle, and there is an advisory committee which sits over the board of directors. The chairman of that advisory committee is the Minister of Finance. The governor of the central bank is also on the advisory committee board, as well as the Director General of the National Development Planning Commission. So there is strong strategic political oversight, and the advisory committee meets once or twice a year, and they provide strategic guidance for the institution, make sure that what we are doing are aligned with government priorities for infrastructure in the country. But the board of directors are delegated with day-to-day responsibility for the institution, including investment decisions. Management also is technical staff led by Chief Executive, myself, and senior staff who have significant private sector investment experience. Next slide, please. We cover a number of different sectors. The economic infrastructure sectors are our main initial focus areas, and they are the sorts of sectors that you would expect an infrastructure fund to focus on. Power, transportation infrastructure, ICT, oil and gas, heavy industries, mining, tourism and hospitality. Next slide, please. We can also do social infrastructure sectors such as health and education, but we must do it in a financially sustainable way. Next slide, please. We're also very important to help Ghana to contribute to the SDGs. So we are a development institution, so we make sure that overall our investments stick to IFC World Bank environmental and social standards. And we also make sure that we are trying to improve the quality of life of the Ghanaian people. Next slide, please. So what have we done so far? In a relatively short space over the last 4 years, we've managed to invest in 13 transactions in Ghana. Our investments have Our commitments have totaled $283 million US dollars. And a fact that we're very proud of, for every $1 that the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund has put into an infrastructure project, we've managed to raise $10 of other people's money, co-investing and co-financing alongside us. So that's approximately $2.8 billion of investment total for the country when all of the projects have been completed. We do have a focus on PPPs and private sector-led infrastructure projects. And because of who we are, our ownership and our strong strategic contacts with the highest levels of government, we feel that we are an ideal investment partner or financial partner for private sector investors looking for exposure in the infrastructure sectors in Ghana. In that, if you're doing infrastructure projects in any African country, you need a strong relationship with the government, clearly. But we are an institution that looks at things as a private sector investor or financier will do. So we have access to government to solve any of our problems, but we also look at things through a private sector lens. So we think we're a very strong potential partner for any investors looking to invest in Ghana. Our portfolio has about 74% debt and 21% equity and 5% mezzanine. We've covered 7 different sectors, projects in the power sector, oil and gas, mining, ICT, transportation, tourism. Every single sponsor that we've backed so far on the right-hand side has been a Ghanaian. We're very proud of that. We're trying to increase the level of Ghanaian participation in the economy in Ghana. 10 of them have been private sector sponsors, 2 of them have been PPPs, and 1 has been a public SOE, which is the Ghana Airports Company Limited. Our project portfolio are very active. 3 are in a stage of development, 4 are actually in construction as we speak, and 6 are already operational, creating jobs and improving economic activity. Our aim overall is to do world-class projects with local sponsors, and as I mentioned, raise the level of Ghanaian participation in private sector infrastructure projects. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just quickly, some of the things that we've done so you get a flavor of what we've done. So the Ghana Airports Company, if anybody's traveled to Ghana in the last couple of years, you'll know that we've had a nice new international terminal, Kotka International Airport. GIIF provided some of the financing for that. In fact, we provided debt along with the African Development Bank and the Development Bank of Southern Africa, DBSA. We managed to close the DFI tranche of that financing, which enabled the financing to be closed. In Ghana's second port, Takoradi Port, we've established or built an oil jetty. We provided significant debt for that, working with local Ghanaian sponsors. That has just become operational and is improving the efficiencies of the port. Next slide, please. Also in Takoradi Port, there's a major expansion. A new multipurpose container terminal is being created. That's a $250 million project where we provided $58 million of debt to that transaction, working with local Ghanaian sponsors, and we've managed to attract some $200 million of outside funding to co-finance this expansion in Takoradi Port. In the ICT sector, we looked very closely at what we would do, realized very quickly that the mobile companies do not need any financing from us. But the real hurdle in Ghana is the high cost and relatively low supply of broadband. So we've created a joint venture company, again with Ghanaian partners, who has laid terrestrial fiber across the country. We've already laid approximately 1,000 kilometers on the western side of Ghana. We are looking to complete that by tying up with fiber on the eastern side of the country and also the northern side. So we'll be able to provide eventually broadband services beyond the borders of Ghana to the north and to the east and to the west. In the power sector, we have been developing a project, Rotan Power, which will be the largest and the cheapest and the most efficient power plant IPP in the country's history. The tariffs will be the cheapest, and it's a combined cycle gas power plant. We've also looking to develop the Atuabo power plant, which is very unique in that it actually will be using flared gas from our oil fields as a fuel source to convert into electricity. So the positive environmental impacts of such a project, we think are very attractive, and that's why we selected to be involved in this project. In the tourism hospitality sector, which we think is a key sector for Ghana moving forward, and it's a major sector where Ghana has unique advantages. We're in the middle of construction of a major new airport city hotel project. If it was a normal 5-star hotel, we probably wouldn't have got involved. But this one is quite unique in that in addition to 200 rooms, it will have 150 fully furnished apartments attached to it. So we're really trying to target the extended stay market for people who tend to come and stay maybe 2 or 3 months, particularly expatriates. Too long to stay in a hotel room, but not long enough to rent an apartment. So we think, and it's uniquely placed close to the airport. So we think that will be a major new attraction to the country. We've also invested in a beach resort along the southern coast of Ghana. Thank you. Next slide, please. An area that we've also put a lot of focus on is the sustainable, affordable student housing market. There's a slight silent crisis in Ghana at the moment in terms of university accommodation for students, particularly because of a very successful policy that the president has initiated, you may have heard of, which is free secondary school education for students. Those students are now becoming of university age, so they've added to the deficit of student accommodation for universities. We're trying to put together a private sector-led solution, which will provide sustainable, affordable, modular apartments for our universities. And we're in the process of just finalizing a pilot that we built ourselves, and we'll be looking to expand it to other investors and financiers and roll it out amongst many universities in Ghana. In addition, we've created what will be one of the first safari parks in West Africa, actually, in Ghana. We'll be ecotourism focused, fully sustainable, and we will be offering this new product for West Africa and Ghana in particular. And we think this will be, again, a major impact on our tourism industry. And finally, we did our first gold mining project last year. One of the major discoveries in Ghana. We provided some financing to that. It's currently under development. But again, the big issue for us is that despite Ghana being famous for gold production, unfortunately, very few Ghanaians own significant stakes in the gold mines in Ghana. We're trying to address that through the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, taking stakes on behalf of the Ghanaian people on a warehouse basis, and then eventually selling down to Ghanaian institutions and individuals. And we also have a long-standing investment in the AFC, the Africa Finance Corporation, in that the government of Ghana took an early equity stake in the AFC, and they've now passed it over to GIIF, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, to be the holder of that equity and the manager of that relationship. And it's been very good for us because we've leveraged and worked very closely with the African Finance Corporation across the continent. So that just gives you a flavor of the projects that we've done in a relatively short space of time. We have a number of partnerships. We've worked with global institutions as well as Ghanaian institutions. And as I said, the real aim of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund is to make sure that we do world-class infrastructure projects in Ghana that can attract financing from international institutions. We have quite a healthy looking pipeline of projects covering all of the sectors that I've mentioned. And some additional ones. For example, we're in the process right now of doing the country's first major toll road project, the Accra-Tema motorway project, which we're hoping will be able to reach financial close before the end of the year and start construction. This will be the first major PPP in the road sector. We're also looking at further investments in the port sector, logistics park. We're also looking at affordable housing to complement the student accommodation that we've been doing. We're looking at the power sector. One of the issues in the power sector in Ghana is that currently we actually have a surplus. We're actually generating more power than we're using. So we put a temporary hold on new generation, but that will probably end in about a year's time. And as we put new power onto into the system, we're going to increase the mix of renewables in our mix in Ghana. So we anticipate that in a year or so's time, there are going to be significant opportunities in renewable power generation projects in Ghana, solar and wind, and we anticipate that GIIF will play a major role in that moving forward. We have further activities in the ICT sector. In the oil and gas sector, we're looking very carefully at LPG distribution. We think that this could have a major positive environmental impact within the country, in that it will allow us, especially if we distribute to the rural areas, to increase the number of clean cooking facilities for our people, and also reduce the level of deforestation, which is going for basic cooking in the country. So this is just a flavor of the types of transactions that we have in our pipeline, and we'll be looking to execute those. And we see major opportunities for investors and financiers looking for exposure in Ghana. So just a couple of reasons why we think GIIF has been successful and why we'll be an ideal partner for investors. We are 100% owned by the government, very proudly so. It gives us access at the highest levels of government and helps us to unlock issues related to the projects that we invest in. We are strongly capitalized relatively. We can write a check from day one, which gives us credibility and allows us to be a good financing partner for international investors. We have a very strong governance structure. As I said, we have an independent board. Day-to-day decisions are made on commercial issues, although we do have strong government oversight overall to the institution through the Ministry of Finance. We have very strong risk management. We actually outsource our due diligence to international standard consultants to help us on the legal, the technical and commercial. As a consequence, the projects that we've invested in do meet the standards required for international financiers. We have a strong management team who have done all of this before on the continent many times, very experienced, and we have a very strong mandate fit with co-financiers. So we are able to unlock new sources of financing for the projects that we're working on. Next slide, please. I think we're coming to the end now. So as I mentioned, we started with $325 million. We've actually committed some 280 million of it. We're actually raising funding from the market because we're 100% owned by the government, and we will remain 100% owned by the government. We are really looking to raise debt to leverage our all equity balance sheet. And we've already been approved an $85 million 10-year line of credit facility from the French Development Agency. We've just had word that we have also a facility approved from the African Development Bank of $75 million. These two approvals will really give a stamp of credibility to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, because trust me, those institutions did a very, very thorough due diligence on the institution, and we passed. So that's a strong endorsement. So we anticipate that we will grow further and further and do more and more work in Ghana. We're also being used by the government to drive many aspects of its infrastructure agenda, and we are being given tasks to really encourage and increase the level of private sector participation in infrastructure through projects that GIIF puts together. So we think we're an ideal institution to partner with. Next slide, please. And that is the overall, the GIIF story in maybe 10 or 15 minutes. These are just a selection of the projects that we've done. So we look forward to working with you. We think Ghana is an ideal investment destination. And if you need a local partner to work with, I don't think you can find a better one than GIIF. Thank you very much. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, Solomon. You say that was a selection of projects, but it sounded very comprehensive to me. I think the figure that stands out is $108 billion investment deficit across Africa. You can only imagine what progress could be made if that gap could be filled.
Absolutely.
Next up, yeah, absolutely. Next up, we have Kofi Andah, Kofi is the country manager for Crown Agents. Kofi, I hope your sound's working, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope my sound is working too. Can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So let me just put my slides up on the screen. So I will be talking about how to navigate the government processes in infrastructure development projects with a focus on the value for money audit that Crown Agents carries out for the government of Ghana through the Ministry of Finance. The structure of the presentation is that, as shown, we'll talk first about Crown Agents and then go into details about what the project aims to achieve, our role, and then specific things we look at, and then give some details of the results that we have achieved from the project. So who are we? We are a leading international development company. Crown Agents provides professional services to the public sector and international organizations, and we operate across the world. Our value proposition, several things, but we are entirely focused on international development objectives, which means that we are not distracted by anything else. We've been in existence for over 180 years. And so we understand the complexities, the challenges that our clients face. We maintain permanent offices across the world, which allows us to understand specific challenges that are faced in specific countries, and also to deliver practical and customized solutions to these problems. We are wholly owned by a non-profit foundation, a not-for-profit foundation, which again means that we are not driven by profitability. We are driven by more than that. And we maintain a wide skill set, although we are primarily focused on specific activities, procurement, fund and grant management, health system strengthening, public financial management, and public sector modernization. And we are a leading expert in public procurement and supply chain management, and we provide project management services. So the aim of our value for money project, which began in 2000, is to assess high value public sector capital contracts to help the Ministry of Finance achieve specific objectives of transparency, accountability, and value for money. We aim to, the audits aim to identify potential financial savings, to improve the contract terms and conditions, and to strengthen the procurement function by identifying capacity building needs within the government. It's important to always bear in mind that as far as Crown Agents is concerned, our client in the VFM, the value for money audits, our client is the Ministry of Finance. Our role is to carry out a qualitative evaluation of risk levels for each of 5 contract assessment components, and I will go into details about each of those 5 subsequently. We will determine an overall risk level to which our client is exposed based on those 5 components, and then we make recommendations on how to reduce the risk in each of those cases. We support the government in negotiating with the proposed contractor. We actually sit in the negotiations with the government and guide the government along. And we will assess any revised proposal that arises from these negotiations. I think a natural question that will arise from this is, what is the result of that? And we will discuss that a little later on. We will also support the government with capacity building. We will help them on areas such as the fundamental principles of value for money in public procurement, how to plan for large capital procurements, how to prepare their employers' requirements, and also how to negotiate on issues with the contractors. So this is essentially the steps, the key steps in the value for money process. We receive a document package from whichever agency in government is engaging a contractor. The documents come to us through the Ministry of Finance. We have an inception meeting after we have reviewed the documents, an inception meeting with the ministry, where we go through the requirements of the audit process of that particular assignment. Then we carry out the assignment, and these are the 5 areas that we look at. We look at the qualifications of the contractor or the supplier. Secondly, the form and conditions of the contract. We look at the commercial terms of the contract, and then we will look at the technical considerations, and finally we'll do a price analysis. Once we have carried this out, we will submit a report to the Ministry of Finance. We first will do a draft report, which will be discussed, and then we do a final report, following which we will have a Government of Ghana team meeting where we will all discuss, that's the Government of Ghana side will discuss the report and how to position in the negotiation. And then we will have a VFM negotiation meeting with the supplier or the contractor. The supplier or the contractor would have been provided the report upfront, so they will have the opportunity to review the report, and they are allowed to dispute our calculations, to provide additional information that we may have missed, etc. So it's a very open system that is carried out. We'll look at the 5 steps separately next, but the process between when we receive the full package, document package, and when we submit our report typically covers 8 weeks. So for the contractors' qualifications, I'm not going to go into great detail on all of these, but we will look at their financial history, the financial resources available to the client. We'll look at their turnover, the experience, contractors' experience, and then we'll look at the personnel experience and qualifications. That's focused on the contractor's key staff. On conditions of contract, we will assess the suitability of the form of contract that has been selected for a particular assignment, and also look at the extent to which the contract conditions maintain a reasonable balance of risk and reward for both parties. That's actually very important. Even though our client is the Government of Ghana, in carrying out this assignment, we look to maintain a balance of risk and reward for both parties. And then we will make recommendations on how to mitigate any risks that are identified with the contract as written. On the commercial terms, we ensure that the contract terms are clearly and fairly established at the outset to protect the interests of both parties, the government and the contractor, and to allocate, again, a fair distribution of risk and reward between them. Then on the technical considerations, we look for a clear statement of the user's requirements, and we look to ensure that the contractor's proposal that the contractor's proposal covers the employer's requirements to ensure that there's coherence, and then we make recommendations for mitigating any risks that we will have identified from gaps that we've seen. And then, of course, the price analysis, which tends sometimes to be very contentious, but not always. Basically, we look to assess whether the contract price is in line with fair market pricing. So in doing this, we allow space for the contractor to make a profit. So it's not about eroding all of the contractor's profits, but we look to ensure that the contractor makes a profit. But it must be a fair market analysis. So the benefits of our work extends beyond the financial savings. We have strengthened institutional procurement knowledge within the Government of Ghana. We have helped the government build capacity and to build good practice. And there is greater institutional awareness of practices, including the need to build in best VFM outcomes right from the start, to upstream the outcomes. The need to use a standard model of contract also has been, there's greater awareness of that in order to provide a proper basis for the attainment of value for money. And also the need for scope of supply and product specifications to be dictated by a well-defined needs assessment of the employer's requirements. That needs to be what dictates the assignment. And then finally, our results over the last several years. So from 2012 to date, we have carried out 49 assignments. However, from when we began this in 2000, we have carried out 152 assignments. These numbers do not include assignments that were cancelled by the government or suspended by the government. This is what we have completed. And the savings that we have made for Government of Ghana through the audit work, through our audit work, this is savings that have been made after the negotiations, have been an amount of 353 million US dollars, which I think is a considerable amount and can go towards several development projects. I'm sure if a fraction of that is given to GIIF, it will be very welcome. So in a nutshell, that is VFM audit work with the Government of Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kofi. Very important area of work, ensuring value for money. Interesting to hear how it works. Can I remind anyone listening that they can put questions in the sidebar? Can I move on to our third guest speaker now? Phil, if you're ready, can you tell us about BHM's experience with the road project you have here in Ghana? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Can you see my presentation on the slide there?
Certainly can, yep.
Excellent, great stuff. Good morning, everyone. My name's Phil Atkinson. So I'm going to do a short 10-minute presentation here, just a whistle stop on our company and what we do. But I'm going to focus really in on the funding of the project that we've recently been mobilising in Ghana. So a little bit about the company. We were founded in 1984, where in essence a bunch of British engineers went to the Bahamas to build a port there, and when we learned quite a lot of the skills of taking British standards into tropical climates where you have to be more self-sufficient and develop skills locally and skill and train and develop people, and then after developing quite well multiple major infrastructure projects across the Caribbean, and such things as runways and sort of major road projects and port projects. The infrastructure for us in that part of the world was quite well developed in the areas we operated. So we decided we'd expand outside of that region, and in particular to focus on the quality standards that we've operated as British engineers for so many years. And we decided that there was clearly a significant need for infrastructure in Africa, and we felt we had a particular set of skills that would add value to the continent of Africa. So in 2014 we commenced planning to enter the continent. So we spent about a year on our business planning and reconnaissance, working with people like the DTI, etc., and then embarked on negotiating various projects, the business model being focused around UK export government financing. So sorts of projects we do are roadworks, major roadworks and highways, airports, runways, that sort of thing, marine work, and other types of things like drilling and water and sewerage. So I'm not going to go into any detail on this slide, but what we were looking for in choosing particular countries within the continent were a stable political landscape, good anti-corruption culture. They've met the UK export finance requirements, so clearly UK export has all sorts of risk matrix of how much it's prepared to provide credit to various countries across Africa. For us, it was easier to stick to English-speaking countries, and that there was a need for infrastructure and a interest from governments to work with private organisations like our own. Excuse me. So our business models are quite interesting, really. We're just a contractor that builds things and designs things. However, in Africa, we specialise on facilitating the export credit finance, which is pretty significant set of activities in delivering projects to the continent. And then we'll do the design planning stages, and then finally we'll implement and execute, deliver the project, and if required beyond there, maintain the project that we built. So I'm going to go to the project in Ghana, and the slide I'm going to spend a lot of detail on is how we went about the processes of arranging UK export finance for the project. The particular project is a 225 million motorway. It's on the west coastal highway, the ECOWAS highway, from Tema Port to the border, going eastwards. Excuse me. The first stage of this project is pretty critical. It's jammed with traffic in rush periods. It goes, they've just expanded the Tema Port, which is obviously a major port in Accra. And the road that we link to is sometimes up to 3 or 4 hours delay for traffic trying to get through the section of road, which clearly has a significant impact on the economy of Ghana and the port's ability to get goods in and out as well. So there is a little graphic of the road. So currently, if you look on the slide, the small picture there on the right-hand side, top right-hand side, you can see the existing road, which is predominantly just a simple 2-lane road with some side roads coming in. Yet it is the main west coastal highway. And the problem being at these interchanges, you get the build-up of traffic for several hours sometimes because of just too much trying to get into too small a space. And the bottom picture gives a schematic of the project that we're currently designing and about to start construction on, which in essence separates the traffic, the local traffic onto side roads. So there'll be 2 lanes each side of the motorway, and then a 6-lane motorway in the middle that segregates the through traffic with interchanges every 5 kilometres. So it just gives you a feeling of the particular project. UKGCC themselves, significant investor into Africa, and the terms of investment, when we go to see typical governments and finance ministries, the terms are quite attractive in terms of interest rates and moratorium periods and payment periods as well. So we're quite welcome with the types of loans that UKGCC are offering. I think then just a little bit on the structure of how these things are pulled together. So first thing we need to identify, in this case, we identified a high priority project, high priority being it's of significant importance to the economy of the country. And I think I've explained on the Tema project why this one was a particular priority. Once we've identified a project, we would work with the borrower, in this case the Government of Ghana and the Ministry of Roads and Highways, in order to define some outline terms under a MOU. The MOU is just simply committing that we're going to work together to try and develop the project. And then during the development phase, we'll develop a contract, etc., working in partnership also with UK Export Finance, because we are effectively the exporter for the project. So I'll make this a bit clearer on the next slide. Excuse me. So these boxes as they go along, let's see if I can put a marker up. No, I can't find it there. So the first thing we have to establish is, will the government work with us on a sole sourcing basis, which is effectively the basis of export credit financing? What sort of guarantees would we require for UKGCC for the particular project? And then what we have to define more about what we're trying to achieve there on the project. We then look for a letter of support from UK Export Finance, and that's really if we identify a project that the in this case Ghana government required, we get the letters of support from the UKGCC team, then we're in business, and then the work really begins. It's a significant undertaking from moving from identifying a project to to constructing a project. So if we think about it in the UK, it's not unusual for that period from identification to construction to take many years, can take up to 20 years to get a project from concept to construction. This method of financing and working with the Ghana government, it took us approximately 3 years to go through something that really is a very significant undertaking. But because of the way these things are structured, the bringing together an initial concept through to the point of constructing, we as the exporter end up financing that process, which can be is rather expensive. You can imagine you're doing conceptual designs and things like that, and you're doing full environmental impact assessments. So it's several $1 million of investment before the contract can be signed and constructed. So the sorts of things, I think Crown Agents touched on it there a minute ago, but the sorts of things we do is create a contract, a commercial contract. In this case, we selected the FIDIC Yellow Book, which is the design and build contract. Define all such things as the specifications, the pricing, the milestone payment schedules, the contractor's methodology of building the project. And then in parallel, all the loan, we facilitate all the loan activities, such things as developing the loan agreements, ensuring that the guarantees are all in place, and then running in parallel signing of loan agreements with signing of a contract for the delivery of the project. And ultimately, after an activity that I think at one point I counted over 110 people working on the tender, whether they be in the British government or in environmentalists or designers or the contractor stuff, in order to pull all that together into a contract agreement and a set of loan agreements that can then be signed off in parallel to allow construction to commence. So apologies, it is a bit of a whistle-stop tour of a very, very complicated and comprehensive process. But my aim was to share that as best I could in 10 minutes. So thank you very much for your patience, and I'll hand back over.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I think it is very important for people to realise how much planning goes into a project like this. I'm sure there's a lot of anticipation for this wonderful new road that will free up traffic around, especially around Tema Port, because we all know it's a major bottleneck. Interestingly, we're open for questions. The first one is aimed at DIT, and it's about what infrastructure opportunities are there for the supply chain. So using BHM as an example, we're aware of the project, we follow the project, and we work with BHM. If they have a need or a requirement, we flag that opportunity to other companies. Especially important to note that if it's a UK export finance supported project, a certain amount of content has to be UK, so we look to the UK first to make sure that that content is fulfilled. I'd like to go back to Solomon. You made an interesting point about the infrastructure to capture the gas from the offshore oil production. Gas is it's a very topical at the moment because of the price of gas on international markets. Can you see a point where Ghana may be a net exporter of gas, or do you think it will all be for domestic consumption?
Thank you very much. I'm not the gas expert, but judging by the size of some of the recent finds that we've had, I think we may very well be in a position that we'll be able to export some gas in time. It depends on future discoveries as well and the demand domestically. But it would not surprise me at all if we got into an excess situation in a few years, which creates an interesting situation for Ghana. As I mentioned, we're currently an excess power producer in a sea of many countries around us who are in deficits. So it does actually present a potential opportunity for Ghana to be able to export power or export some of the raw materials of power to our neighboring countries. We obviously would have to build the infrastructure to be able to do that efficiently, and it also will depend on the price or the cost of exploiting those gas resources, but it's definitely an opportunity for Ghana. For this specific project that we're talking about, we think that it can be a major new initiative for the country. And if we manage to actually execute this transaction, it has replicability written all over it in terms of other places other countries in Africa that are currently flaring gas and other parts of the world. So we see that as a great importance, potentially broader than just Ghana. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Solomon. Absolutely agree how important that is, especially if we're to reduce the amount of carbon that we're putting into the atmosphere. Kofi, I have one for you, and it'd be interesting to know what the relationship is like between Crown Agents and the contractors that you're assessing for value for money.
Thanks for the question, Peter. Crown Agents doesn't maintain a relationship with the contractors. Like I said, our client is the government of Ghana through the Ministry of Finance specifically. And so when it comes to engage in collecting the information, the Ministry of Finance gets in touch with whichever contracting ministry is party to the project and collects the information, supplies us with the information. We do the evaluation of it and send a report back to Ministry of Finance, who distribute it. And so we do not engage with any of the contractors directly. We do not maintain a relationship with them.
Thanks, Kofi. The next time I have a discussion with a contractor, I'll ask for their view on the relationship with the Crown Agents, but thanks for that. One for Phil. It'd be great to know what the most challenging aspect of your road project has been so far.
So many challenges, but I think our job is what's called a Category A project from an environmental perspective, and therefore the standards of environmental impact assessment and resettlement plans that has to be done before the loans can be signed off is very, very significant undertaking. So I think our biggest challenge was to not only satisfy the local Ghanaian Environmental Protection Agency's needs, but we've got to set aside the international standards as well under the UKGCC loan needs. And I think sometimes that could be a bit frustrating for all parties, including the government of Ghana, because it is a slow, long process trying to satisfy all those needs, which puts quite a big delay in trying to close a deal in order to move on with construction. So I think that was pretty well our biggest challenge.
Thanks, Phil. That leads me to my next question, and I'll possibly Kofi is the right man to answer, but I'll throw it open anyway. How does the procurement process in Ghana compare to other countries in West Africa or other countries in Africa more broadly?
Let me pass this on to my colleague Dilav Mreku, who's on the call. He is more of the procurement guy on expert in this area. So Dilav.
All right, thank you, Kofi. Please, the question again.
Yeah, the question is about the procurement process in Ghana. It's quite lengthy. How does it compare to other West African countries, and how does it compare to African countries in general?
All right, so firstly, I would say the ultimate goal of every procurement is to always maintain the fairness, the transparency, value for money. So if you should ask the process involved with the value for money here in Ghana, or the procurement process here in Ghana, I would say the process is standard almost everywhere. But then the ultimate goal fundamentally is to make sure that the processes involved here we are talking about still maintains the transparency we need, the value for money that's needed, and then making sure you maintain the policies and then the regulations which are attributed to this procurement process. Because yes, every country, every organization has got its own procurement policies and regulations. So the ideal focus is to maintain these policies and regulations and make sure we maintain the value for money aspect of it, and then the transparency to maintain to make sure we are transparent enough throughout the process.
I think to add to that, I think we especially if you look at the process going through the value for money audits, procurement going through the value for money audits, I think that we tend to be more open than you would probably find in other countries. It's definitely more rigorous, but also more open, and it's a fairer to both parties. It's a fairer process to both parties.
Exactly. And as I said, always we try to maintain the standard of, right from the planning stage to the management of tenders, development of specifications, contract negotiations. We always try to make sure we follow these processes involved by maintaining the transparency, integrity, and then value for money aspect of the process.
Sorry, that's great, thanks. Phil, I have one for you. I think you touched on this, but someone's asked, at what stage did you undertake the environmental and social impact study for your project?
So thanks, Peter. Firstly, we needed to develop a conceptual design. So after we've identified the project, we would develop the conceptual design, which probably took around about a year or something like that. Once we have a conceptual design, we're in a position then to engage with the environmental authorities to pull together that environmental plan. So through the sort of two and a half year period of developing the project from an MOU to a signed contract, a year into it is pretty well where the environmental started, and it didn't stop until we finally signed the loans off.
Okay, thanks. I've also been asked a personal one for DIT. How can we be contacted? So I'm going to put a general email address in the sidebar. We're running over time, but I just thought before we close, it might be useful if you guys have any questions for each other. All the work you do is very closely linked, and that's why we chose you to be on the panel. So if you have questions for one another, now is the time.
I think for me, I would be very interested to have a conversation with Solomon with the amount of money that are being dispersed, the number of projects that you are dispersing funds to, how you are able to ensure that contracts, the BOQs that are submitted to you as part of your appraisals, etc. How are you able to ensure that those are actually fairly priced? In our experience, we've noticed that that's an area where there's a lot of padding usually. So how are you able to ensure that? And subsequent to that, I think I'd really love to have an engagement outside of this forum with you to explore these further.
Thank you, Kofi. Yes, I would definitely also like to engage with you outside this forum. I think it'll be useful to understand each other's operations a little bit better. But on your specific question, we tend to finance projects, and most of our projects tend to be fixed price turnkey contracts, and they are often through a competitive bidding process. So there's a built-in due diligence component or review of the costs associated. And in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, we do farm out our due diligence to external parties who can go through in more of the details to find out, to make sure that it is appropriately priced against benchmarks. And then in the individual monitoring of that, we then rely upon essentially the project sponsors and any independent engineers, etc., to make sure that monitoring and maintenance goes as designed for. But we ourselves are kind of one step removed as a financier from those processes, but we make sure that those aspects are built into the design of the project.
Okay, thanks. I think I'll reach out after this because it'll be interesting to discuss this further, as well as what we do in contract management as well, which we didn't present here. Thank you.
I have a question for Phil.
Carry on.
Phil, have you started construction, firstly? And secondly, if you knew at the beginning what you know now about the whole, you said it's taken 2.5, 3 years, etc., to put this whole thing together, is there any way that you can think that it could have been done faster?
Okay, well, good questions there. So it's a design and build contract. So during the period of raising the loans, you only take the project to a conceptual design, because you can imagine the design is an extremely expensive activity. Even conceptual is expensive. So currently we're working on the design, the detailed design for the project, and working also, there's people that are in the way of construction in any event, and there's loads of power lines and all sorts of things that are in the way. So we've got to do effectively some enabling work, which is ongoing as we speak, such that construction can start next year. We're hoping, ideally, if we get all the people and the utilities out of the way, we can start building the interchanges by about February, is that sort of timeline. In terms of what could we do differently, I did mention on my presentation, I mean, in the UK this could take 12 or 15 years, and we've done this in 3. So I have to commend the Ghana government. As an exporter, we'll always moan about everybody, because that's our nature. But the Ghana government have actually done something that I don't think is possible in other parts of the world. But even given that backdrop, there's still so many interfaces with so many government departments, and they don't talk to each other. So I think if I could do something differently, I could somehow help the government departments to talk to each other, because it's saved me a lot of time talking to each separate department. To speed it up, I think the problem is the Ghana government and other African governments, they hear so much talk all the time that we can bring finance, we can build you a project, that they get a bit fed up of it. So they don't really want to invest too much time and effort in something before it becomes real. And so for us, the challenge is getting people to want to invest time and effort for it to become real, and to convince them that it really is going to happen. So if I could turn back the clock, just get people a bit more excited from all sides to speed the process, that would be helpful.
Useful. I could talk a lot about that as well, and I'm part of the government, about different parts of the government not talking, but we'll leave that for another day.
It's a great answer from Phil, because we only have to look at HS2 in the UK, the high-speed rail, to realise how long that's been in the planning and how slow before they actually started construction. I think it's great that Kofi and Solomon have reached out to one another. That is what would happen at a live event. That back in the old days before COVID, that is what events like this were all about, people networking. Lastly, I'd like to thank all our guest speakers. I think the presentations have been excellent, and we really appreciate you spending your time and sharing your knowledge with us and the people tuning in. So on that note, thank you very much, and we will close. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.